Hey, good morning. I'm Zeki Hamid. It's Thursday, and this is Seattle Now. Tension with ICE has been rising in cities across the country, including here in Seattle. If you encounter a federal agent, it's important to know your rights. We'll talk to Henry Hwang from the Northwest Immigrant Rights Project in a minute. But first, let's get you caught up. Washington State has expanded telehealth access for people who need treatment for opioid use disorder. The Teleboop hotline is now available statewide for people who need a same-day prescription for buprenorphine, which eases opioid withdrawal and supports recovery. In 2024, the hotline launched in King County as a pilot program. State health officials say more than 1,400 people have already used it. State lawmakers once again are considering a bill that would lower the blood alcohol limit from 0.08 to 0.05. Supporters say lowering the DUI threshold will save lives. In years past, the hospitality industry has opposed the change, arguing it would hurt bars and restaurants that rely on alcohol sales, and it would be difficult for servers to identify customers who are impaired. In the U.S., only Utah has a 0.05 limit. There's a public hearing in the State House this morning at 8 a.m. And beloved brick-and-mortar movie store Scarecrow Video has reached its emergency fundraising goal. The milestone allows Scarecrow not only to stay open, but the store has expanded its video selection over the last year. Scarecrow launched a $1.8 million campaign under the name SOS in mid-2024. On Wednesday, leaders say they've met the goal. Scarecrow Video is home to one of the largest publicly accessible video collections in the country. Check back for more headlines on tonight's episode of Seattle Now. Federal immigration enforcement activity is increasing and escalating. Last week, masked immigration and customs enforcement agents arrested 3 people in North Seattle and put them in an unmarked van. The same week, an ICE agent shot and killed Renee Good in Minneapolis, and Border Patrol shot 2 people in Portland. It's becoming unclear even to local leaders what federal agents are allowed to do and who holds them accountable. Several people at a Seattle City Council Public Safety Committee meeting this week expressed that concern.
I asked the City Council to investigate, publicly comment on, and pass a resolution regarding the SPD's authority to arrest federal agents who, clearly outside the scope of their own duties and authorities, commit crimes in Seattle.
Washington Democrats have by and large condemned ICE's actions, with Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson encouraging people to sign up for ICE mobilization alerts. The Washington GOP told Seattle Now they support law enforcement operating within the law and with clear accountability when it's not at the expense of officer safety or causing risks to families. ICE did not respond to our request for comment. There's also a lot of confusion about what rights people have when encountering immigration officials. Henry Hwang is here to help clear some of that up. He's a directing attorney at the Northwest Immigrant Rights Project. Thanks for taking the time, Henry.
Appreciate you having me on the show.
So ICE has been around since 2003. It was created to enforce immigration law. What do you think that means they should be doing?
This was born out of sort of the post-9/11 world, where we were really concerned about our nation's safety. And so ICE became, sort of the enforcement arm that was under the umbrella of the Department of Homeland Security. Now, they were tasked with doing things to protect our nation, including, protecting against drugs that were coming in, human trafficking, really important issues. But unfortunately, what we're seeing now under this administration is all of the resources are being dedicated to basically deporting immigrants.
Was that a big part of their initial purpose, or has that grown recently?
It's absolutely grown. I mean, that was one of its original intents, was to enforce immigration laws, right? Mm-hmm. But the Department of Homeland Security has many different agencies within it. One of them is the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. These are the folks that are typically handling, maybe your green card applications. If someone is married to a citizen and they're applying to become a lawful permanent resident, or if you do have a green card and you want to become a citizen, you would be applying through United States and Immigration Services. But now, under this administration, they have been empowered with arresting people. Almost almost unheard of beforehand, certainly locally, where people would go in for their interviews thinking, oh, I'm going to get a green card because I married this United States citizen. We've been happily married for years and we've been following all the rules. During that interview, if they found out that perhaps you did have an immigration violation in the past, they are actively now arresting people during those interviews. And this is unprecedented, frankly.
Okay, so when do federal agents have the right to carry out an immigration enforcement?
ICE is allowed to arrest an individual if they have probable cause of an immigration violation. Okay, and so they have to do this either through a warrant, in which case that they know the identity of the person and they know the violation, or they suspect there's a particular violation. But if they don't know who this person is and they're sort of out on the streets, then they do have to have probable cause that this person has violated the immigration laws. They can't just go around arresting everybody.
So the Supreme Court recently allowed ICE to racially profile people. Does that mean that being non-white or even having an accent is enough to get you stopped and questioned?
Well, I mean, that case is still pending, but it's hard to answer your question. It's sort of a broad question. Generally speaking, do I think that ICE is emboldened to push the edges of the boundaries of what they're legally allowed to do? I think the answer is obviously yes. We're seeing all the time that they are arresting people and claiming after the fact certain facts that just don't comport with reality. They're not consistent with eyewitness accounts or video evidence that we're seeing after the fact. And so I think that ICE will continue to do this until enough people push back.
So I'd love to run through some scenarios with you, Henry, just to let people know what rights they have or what they should and should not do in case they encounter an ICE officer. So if you're driving, when can they pull you over? Do they have the same rights as police officers for pulling a car over?
Yeah, it's somewhat similar, but they have to have what's called reasonable suspicion that someone in the car has violated an immigration law or is here unlawfully. Now, reasonable suspicion, that's sort of a legal term of art. It basically means that they have to be able to specify articulable facts that are reasonably suspect a person of an immigration violation. That's the standard right now. Like I said before, I think that they are always pushing the boundaries on this. And it seems like they are seemingly just racial profiling, somebody who seems brown or a shade darker, that they are pulling folks over.
So if let's say I'm driving in the car and I get pulled over by an ICE agent, what should I do?
First, I think that you should, think about your safety, pull over to a safe location where it's safe to do so. And I would probably have just three things ready: your driver's license, your registration, and your proof of insurance. Now, a large segment of the population is used to this, driving while black or driving while brown. You should probably keep your hands on the steering wheel or in a place where they can see and not give a reason for the ICE officer to fear for their own safety. And at that point, apart from giving them those documents, depending on your situation, I would either remain silent if you're undocumented, except for one question which I would ask, which is, am I free to go? If they say no and continue to ask questions, I would only say that I would like to speak to a lawyer and otherwise remain silent. But if you are, for example, a citizen or you have legal status, you may want to show proof of that. For example, show your passport or tell them that you are a citizen, and then again ask if you're free to go. because frankly, you're pretty well protected at that point. You do not have any immigration violations.
What if, let's say, I'm walking in public and I get stopped there and somebody just says the question, where were you born?
I wouldn't answer that question. If somebody briefly stops you, and this goes across the board, whether this is ICE or law enforcement, I would use that same question. Am I free to go? And if they say, no, you're not free to go, then it depends on whether you're documented or undocumented. If you're undocumented, my suggestion would just be to remain silent. Now, the reason I say this is because you'll recall earlier I said ICE needs probable cause to arrest you. Right. And if they don't know who you are, the only way that they can get that probable cause to arrest you is through things that you say to them. So that's why they're asking these questions. That's why they're going to keep badgering you to give them enough information that allows them to arrest you. So your best bet if you're undocumented in those situations is to first say, am I free to go? And then otherwise remain silent and ask to speak with a lawyer. There's also a few important things that you shouldn't do, whether you're in a car or out in public like you asked. And that's you shouldn't run away. You shouldn't try to flee. You shouldn't lie to an officer. And you shouldn't show any false documents. Right. Because if you do any of these things, then that might give them the sort of probable cause to be able to then detain you and arrest you.
What rights do bystanders have when they see immigration enforcement? We've seen a lot of videos of people going around and filming, and then ICE agents telling them to stop filming. Can they tell people to stop filming?
They can certainly tell them to stop filming, but you don't have to stop. Bystanders play an incredibly important role right now. Courts have long recognized the right to record law enforcement carrying out their duties in public spaces. We do this because we have to be able to hold officials accountable for their actions. And, more than ever, this is important because, we're hearing the rhetoric from the government. We're hearing their post hoc justifications for certain arrests or certain behaviors. And we know that this does not square with reality. And so having this evidence, having videographic evidence of what ICE is actually doing is incredibly important. And it's important not just for the person, who's subject to this enforcement, the person who's being arrested, but really to hold ICE accountable, to try to change their actions and show them that they can't keep pushing the line, that what they are doing is improper and illegal.
Yeah, that was actually a question that I had, is what should they do with that footage that they just took?
So typically, when we talk about recording, one thing that we ask folks not to do is to live stream. The reason we say that is because there are, immigrants and people in our country who come here fleeing persecution. And they may have good reasons to not want their face publicized or their names out there because they fear harm or some retribution. So if you have recorded something, and of course, you as the recorder have to sort of exercise your judgment about the situation as well. Will recording this escalate the situation? And are you in a safe position? And also, is the person who's being subjected to this ICE enforcement, are they now in a safer position or a less safe position? So you have to think about this and you use your judgment when you do that. But to answer your question, once you do have a recording, my suggestion is if they have a family member that you know of, that you speak with them, or you contact local legal organizations or nonprofit organizations that work with immigrants, because they might be able to give you advice on who this recording might be useful for. For example, I'm an attorney. If we suspect that an arrest is illegal, that ICE has broken its own policies or even the Constitution in making an arrest, we would love to have this evidence to show to the judge, and in order to suppress some of the information that came out of that arrest. And that would be very helpful to attorneys in getting out that person who's being detained.
I want to ask a question here that sort of challenges some of these narratives here. Because law enforcement, obviously, at any level is supposed to keep us safe. So if we're just considering our own safety here, should people just let ICE do their job and back away?
Absolutely not. If you look at the trajectory of ICE's actions, right, and they began by saying that they were making us safer by going after criminal immigrants that had violated criminal laws, and that they were going to go after them, the worst of the worst, they said. But, soon after, what we recognized that despite what they were saying, they were really just going after all immigrants. They kept repeating the line that it was just the worst of the worst, but in reality, they were just casting a wide net and going after all immigrants. And now with what we hear out of Minnesota, it's not just immigrants they're going after, but they're trampling on the rights and lives of even citizens. So in my mind, this trajectory is really one towards authoritarianism more than anything else. It's showing that they're going after anybody who just opposes them or disagrees with what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And so I think if you agree with that, then it is critically important to be a bystander, to witness what is happening and to become involved and resist what is happening, because this is affecting all Americans now and not just immigrants.
Northwest Immigrant Rights Project Directing Attorney Henry Hwang, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here.
Appreciate you listening to Seattle Now, and thanks to our generous donors for your support. You can help us out by clicking the link in the show notes and following, rating, and reviewing the show on your podcast app. Today's episode was produced by Brooklyn Jamerson Flowers. It was edited by Caroline Chamberlain Gomez. Our production team also includes Andy Hurst, Vaughn Jones, Paige Browning, and Patricia Murphy. Greg Kramer does our theme music. Seattle Now and KUOW Public Radio are members of the NPR network. I'm Zeki Hamid. Take care of each other and see you tonight for Evening Headlines.